Right? All right, hold on. I gotta clear you so that I can open it and start, and then I'll bring you in. One sec. Hey everybody, welcome to another day of Learn from the Pros. It is a new week. So for those of you who I haven't spoken to, which is probably everybody who watches this, welcome to another week. Hope you guys had a great weekend. Hopefully things are well in your neck of the woods, and hopefully you're staying safe and staying healthy. And yeah, I want to welcome you to another week of Learn from the Pros. I'm very excited about today and about this week. If you haven't already done so, you want to head over to my website, Jason Reynolds Pro Audio, opt in with your email so that you can stay up to date with what's happening. I send out the lineup every week on Sunday or Monday. Usually I send out the lineup to keep you guys up to date with what's happening. So today we got my good friend Aaron Robertson. He's standing by on the line. Very excited to talk to him. And then tomorrow we got Steve Vian, who is the owner of Production Service Industries here. Steve is a good friend of mine. I also work at Production Service Industries, so you're gonna want to hear from him. He's built multiple production companies. And then Friday, special announcement, we have to postpone our Friday one because our guest that was lined up for Friday, Martin Lewis, he has something has come up for him on Friday. So we won't be doing one on Friday this week, but I promise you we're going to reschedule that one. Martin is the production manager for Reggae Sumfest, which is one of the largest reggae festivals in the world. It is definitely the largest reggae festival in Jamaica. So we're going to be talking to Martin, but we're going to have to postpone it and give you guys a new date. So please head over to my website, Jason Reynolds Pro Audio, opt in with your email to stay in touch so that I can keep you posted on what's happening. And secondly, we had our volume 4, our 4th masterclass yesterday. So if you haven't already done so, check out patreon.com/Jason Reynolds Pro Audio for masterclass training. The masterclasses have been excellent. You get to ask questions. You get to be totally engaged. And so you should do that. You should check out patreon.com/Jason Reynolds Pro Audio. So without any further ado, let me bring this fine gentleman, onto the screen. That is Aaron Robertson. How you how you doing, bro?
I'm good, man.
Good,
Just
good.
honestly busy, like we just talked about. I'm just working on. Recently, I've been trying to get some of my own music going.
Yeah.
I just did this Spitfire Audio's got this Westworld scoring competition, so to keep myself busy, I'm trying to work on that a little bit. Just have a good
Cool.
time. When I'm not,
Man.
we got a 1-year-old. We had her birthday last week, so
Nice. Yeah, I remember when she was born.
loving it.
Yeah, today's actually my son's 4th birthday, so lots of birthdays all around in the month of May.
Happy birthday, little dude.
Yeah, thankfully it's warm enough, so they're outside. They've been outside all day playing and stuff. So without further ado, let's jump into it. For the people watching, tell everybody who you are, what you're currently doing. I know you talked about a little bit about getting some of your own music out, but you're a pretty famous guy. Yeah, you're not gonna agree with me. It's okay. It's my show.
Yeah,
So
doesn't feel like it. So that's cool to
yeah.
I'm Aaron Robertson. I'm a keyboard player, producer, composer, whatever I'm doing at the time. But I've been with Elevation Worship for um, about 13 years now. In '07, I started playing their keys and programming on albums, and
Right.
I've gotten to see it all over these years, like turn into what it is today, and be really involved with all of that step by step. So kind of see
That's
a lot here. Yeah,
so
yeah.
you were like 12 when you started at Elevation? I mean, like, dude.
Which is essentially 12.
um,
Yeah.
so tell us a little bit about your start in music. Like, what age did you start playing? Because I mean, I don't. Let me say this again. I always say this disclaimer, but the people who watch this program are used to the fact that by now they know that I say whatever I feel like on my program. So I'm gonna make, for me personally, um, Elevation Worship and Hillsong are the two most impactful Christian artists in my life. And so as far as I'm concerned, in terms of the music that you guys are writing and putting out, in terms of the music that you guys are creating, it sits up at the top for me in terms of the most impactful music I've ever heard, and that I'm a fan of. So in order to create that stuff, you've had to have been doing, I mean, you've been playing there for 13 years. So what I want to talk about a little bit is that journey to get to that point where you're now producing and programming and playing on these records, um which are hugely, like, I mean, you guys stack up against any of those big pop artists out there. I mean, you're a multi-platinum selling recording act. So talk to me about when you got started, like what was that like? I know people talk about piano. I hated piano lessons when I was a kid.
Yeah. So I'll
So
start. I'll
yeah.
start when it comes to like music for me in my life,
Uh-huh.
and I'll work my way up to elevation. But the we grew up going to garage sales a lot when I was younger, and
Nice.
one thing that I fell in love with was an air operated organ that my parents got at a garage sale,
Cool.
and I was like 4 or 5 maybe, and they noticed that I like really was digging this thing. So my mom was always, she grew up playing a little bit. My dad's not musical at all, but she was like, if you're interested, we can do piano. And I
Right.
was like, I want to. And because she knew kids, you never know what they're going to fall in love with and if they actually
Right.
want to do it, if you're forcing them to do it. But started taking lessons when I was 8. And my first teacher, which I think that really helped set a tone for what I eventually loved, but she would split lessons into 50% piano, 50% keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'd be like, 30 minutes on the piano, 30 minutes either digging through sounds and like playing the song I learned on a different patch, or just in general, like learning what a keyboard was,
Wow.
and kind of developing both sides of the piano.
Right.
So took lessons from 8 to 16. I always had an ear, which got me in trouble with teachers sometimes because they're trying to teach you to read, and it was a pretty big struggle for me to read sheet music
Right.
because when I heard it, I was like, I think I got this, and I would never really commit. So finding a teacher to really help me learn to read was hard, and also a
Mm-hmm.
teacher that would help me create because I always wanted to just make music.
Right.
I would have a tape recorder set up on my piano, and I would just play, and in my head too, I would have like scenes going on. So I'd be playing things and being like, "Hey, mom, this is a battle," or whatever, and I'd play this vibe. So it's very like a cinematic, movie-driven songwriter, quote unquote songwriter, as a
Right.
child because I just loved doing it, and I would have all
Mm-hmm.
these images and like characters in my head that. So over the years, I just kept writing and trying to sheet read. Started playing church when I was 11 years old,
Wow.
and was part of the youth band. My youth pastor bought a motif for the church, uh, but he knew that I wanted one so bad, so he kind of like, I played it every week, but it wasn't mine, but I used it a ton.
Right.
And um, yeah, I just kept high school, skateboarding, basketball, piano. That was like my main 3 things. And then got into, like, I had a keyboard where we could have 5 stems. I'd go through and play drums for 3 minutes, kind of having the parts in my head, then go back and play keyboard and then or piano or something, and then go back and add. And I would just make all these unquantized, messy songs on my Yamaha upstairs late at night,
Right.
and just kept driving home like that. I just loved like writing. Like a lot of it was kind of movie score stuff, but a lot of it was like songs, maybe songs for the church. Maybe I was in like a little worship band one year that I homeschooled.
Right.
Um, so I had a little bit of like playing for people experience one year when I was 12. Um, and then in college is where I like dove into Reason. So I was like a big Reason guy for. I still have it. I love it. I use it every
Right.
week.
Yeah.
Every Elevation performance I've ever played is only in Reason.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah. So until recently, I've been able to bring in some contact stuff. Like I think it was last year, they brought in VST support, which is huge. So you can
Uh-huh.
finally use everything. But I
Right.
got away from Reason. I'll get to that. But yeah,
Yeah.
got into Reason, got into Pro Tools for recording audio.
Uh-huh.
Was making music all through college. In my second year of college is where, so Wade Joy, who's the worship pastor at
Hmm.
Elevation, he became my youth pastor right before my last year of high school.
Right.
Mac Brock, so we're all from Columbia, South Carolina.
Okay.
Mac Brock and him are both in Columbia, and I knew both of them. We led
Uh-huh.
worship together. And when I was in college, I would go back to my home church and lead with Wade, sometimes Mac, a bunch of dudes that are all like in the same circle. And second year of college, got a call from, I think Wade initially let me know about it, but it fell through. And then Mac called me and said, "Hey, I'm going to Charlotte, where this church Elevation is. I'm leading. If you want to come play keys." I was like, "Shoot, it's extra, like some extra cash on the weekend." And I was
Right.
like, "Drive up. It's an hour and a half from Columbia."
Okay.
I was still in college, so I was like, "Can make it work." I was started to do that. So every weekend, pretty much, I'd go up to Charlotte, and I did that for 4.5 years.
Oh, cool. Wow.
Which is a lot of driving and a lot of mileage write-offs. But
Right. Right. Right.
yeah, and then eventually moved to Charlotte in 2011. Um, and let me think real quick. That by that time, yeah, it had grown a lot. I'm trying to remember how many campuses we had by that point, but it had become like taken off around
Right.
11. A lot of big things we did around the city and big Christmases, and like the church was growing like crazy.
Right.
Um, and yeah, I just been in Charlotte ever since. And um, the first phone call I ever made, so I was playing keys. The first time I ever played was like during a baptism, and I
Uh-huh.
remember padding and playing for everybody to get baptized, but it was like so many people. I was like mind
Right.
blown because it's my first time, and there's like, all right, now we're gonna baptize 50 people. Like,
Right.
oh, and they're like, we just play through it all. I was like, all right, fine. So I was
Yeah.
playing for forever, and I think a couple months later, I had been making music. I had a couple friends, videographers that I was like making tracks for, and my biggest dream was to produce hip hop, pop, and score movies. And I was like, that's the three things I really want to do.
Right.
Um, so I called the creative pastor. No, I called the CFO of the church, Chunks Corbett, and I was like,
Right.
hey, I want to score whatever y'all need. Like if there's anything cool, videos, because they're always doing something creative, So
Right.
any cool tracks you need or anything, I'd love to help. And he's like, dude, I'm not your guy. You need to call Larry back.
Right.
He's like, I don't know anything. So I'm a creative guy, and Larry Huback at the time, really talented leader and speaker and creative director, but he kind of got me in the right direction. So I was like making tracks every week, if not like usually one a week or something, for some sort of creative element or some sort of video. Um, so back home in Columbia, I'd be making all these tracks for church and then driving up on the weekends. And I just kept doing it all the way through college. I graduated, had a business degree with a marketing and management double major. It's like a total
Uh-huh.
backup.
Yeah.
But my parents were like, you need to go to college. So did that, but haven't
Yeah.
touched my degree,
Oh,
which is
nice. Wow.
like thankful I didn't have to get a business job.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
kept doing music, moved to Charlotte, kept staying involved with the church. Do other stuff on the outside too, other production and like music for commercials sometimes, and film and production for local artists or whoever, CCM stuff. But yeah, it's just like the church has been a huge part of my life. Like I said, I've gotten to be there for almost the entire journey of. I think it was like a year old when I got involved. like a year, like 14 months old or something. And yeah, dude, like kept doing it. That's essentially all. Like I never, thankfully, and it might be laziness. Sometimes I blame myself that it's laziness, but like I haven't
Uh-huh.
really had to chase or like really like go after things. Like I feel like things have really happened step by step for me, and I love people too, and like talking and networking, and so um, I feel like things have just naturally happened for me, which is a
Right.
huge blessing, you know. Um, and yeah, I'm loving what I'm doing for sure.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah,
I got a question for you, and I would love for anybody watching. As you guys know, most of you have probably been on the program before, have watched the program before. Remember to drop your questions in the comments. But in those early days, right? Like,
yeah,
did you guys? I know it's one thing to say, man. We always believed that because one of the things I try to do with this program, like we kind of talked about before, is not necessarily focus on the technical stuff. You know, how do I set up reason or how do I use contact? Because that stuff you can learn online, right? Like you can go on YouTube and watch a video and learn that. I try
yeah,
to focus on the intangibles, the driving hour and a half each way to be a part of something.
right,
Did you always know, like beyond the shadow of a doubt, know? And I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I think it's important for people watching.
yeah,
That elevation would be as huge at it as it is now, and was that your goal to be a part of something that was massive, to sell millions of records? To what was the driving force, the motivator that gets you in your car to drive an hour and a half each way?
right. The answer is no. Yeah, you knew that, but like community, and I mean, I grew up in church, so like having a church and to get to be that involved in like creating for your church and doing it with people you love. Because initially when I started driving up, there was dudes from Columbia that would drive up as well. So I had like this circle of friends, and I didn't really know anybody in Charlotte for the most part. It was mainly people from Columbia coming up to be a part, and only a few of them stayed. A lot of those other band guys just stayed in Columbia and lived their life.
Hmm.
They're awesome guys, but like um, it was totally like loving um, a church that was like doing a lot and had so much momentum, feeling like I was like some sort of part of that, and to use my creative ability and feel valued and like be excited about what I was adding to it is that's like kept me coming back, you know. And
Right.
I mean, there's always like community, yes, but like
Hmm.
to feel like your gift is playing a big role in something, even if it's, I would make things way bigger in my head than I like. If I
Right.
got to make a track for a Christmas video, I would feel like that was the dopest video ever, just because I was
Right.
like,
Right.
I love like doing this. This is so sick. I hope everybody's like impacted by this, and I really like care. So yeah, it was a lot of like, yeah, never do like album sales and touring and all that. Like never, it was just something that eventually happened.
Right.
And you know, like there's definitely planning and things that communicate or conversations that happen through leadership over leadership and other people to make those decisions. Like you know, Pastor Steve and Chris and that, the team back in the day. Like when we started touring, it was almost like, hey, now is the time for this to happen. But it wasn't, and there was vision from like Pastor Stevens super like had vision of like what he wanted for the worship team and all these things over the years, but he didn't demand it and like
Right.
force anything. I feel like things really did happen in their due time. But yeah, for me, never thought I would be like head producing these albums. Never thought I would get to go to the Grammys for my church. You
That
know?
it's crazy, bro. Right.
Like none of that stuff. Like I grew up listening to Christian music, also pop. I love country music, but like Alan Jackson hits
Right.
my heart. But yeah, it was just like something I loved. And too, like just on the geeky side, like Michael W. Smith, Stephen Pierce Chapman, like CCM legends, like all the like little programming cool treats in the background or like little hooks here and there that you can't, that aren't like the main thing, but just like give character to the song. As a kid, like that made me so excited. I was like, "Can you hear that?" My dad, my
Right.
mom. No, what are you talking about? I'm like, there's a little. It's on
A
the right
a
side, and
bell.
it's a little thing. Yeah, and then they'd be like, "Oh, that's cool. I didn't notice that." So that
Right.
those kind of things, like attention to detail and the things that make a song. I'm going too deep on a different topic, but
No,
yeah.
I love it, man. I love it. That's so cool. So there's a good question here in the comments from David Jones. I'm going to get to your question in a second, David, but I want to ask you before I get to that question because it's going to tag into this question I have to ask.
Cool.
At what point, if you can remember a specific in Canada here, our equivalent to ESPN is TSN, which is our sports network, and they have this segment of the highlight show called the TSN Turning Point, right? So you have a sporting event, and then in the seventh inning, the shortstop dude dives and catches this ball, and for the final out, they come back in the bottom of the seventh and hit 2 home runs and take the lead, and that's the TSN Turning Point, right? Is there a point that you can remember where you guys sat there sort of just blown away and knew that this was the point where Elevation was now a global voice when it came to worship music? Can you remember that point when that happened?
I don't know. It's probably different from me. I don't know if I ever the global moment. I can tell you one moment that really like made me realize how big of an impact we were making. It's when we
Right.
did Easter at Time Warner Arena, and we like rented out the arena for the church, and it was like bigger than anything I've ever been a part of. Sure, there's like you're stoked because you're playing like a really big venue, but it was like at that point we had multiple locations, so it was like you're actually seeing the entire church for the first time because you're always traveling around campus to campus. Back then, bands would rotate all over the place.
Right.
So nowadays we're pretty much like everybody's at a certain place. But that was the first time I'd like seen the whole church in one place. I mean, it's like bringing it back to what the church you grew up at. Like
Right.
this church, there's 1,300 people here. This is the whole church. But like seeing that is like, okay, this entire arena is full. This is our church. This is
Right.
great. That was one for me. It was like Easter of 2010, I think.
Yeah, I remember that, man. I was like, they're doing what? Like, what? What do you mean
Yeah,
they're doing a live recording in an arena? What? Like, what? It's like,
yeah.
some, what? Yeah, it's crazy.
That was Easter, and then we did the live recording twice in that same
Right,
arena,
right,
like a year later or something. That was one for me. I'm trying to think too. Like, um, this is way more recent, but the song of blessing is it's very very apparent and eye opening how present we are throughout the world.
right,
Right, it's really
right.
special to see. And that song is like been huge for so many people, and it came out at the coolest time ever.
Yeah,
Like it
absolutely.
was such a quick turnaround. We literally, Chris, Pastor Stephen, Cody, and Carrie wrote it, played it at church that weekend, tracked it, and then like made it better in the studio just by like, I mean, we kept all the audio from church,
Right.
added some stuff, and made a couple of edits, and like that's it. So, and
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
for us, like seeing the response from that. That's been a really for my heart and mind another huge turning point to realize like because it does sometimes you feel like you're in a bubble even though you're getting to travel and see people and see
right.
the impact. Um, this was like that song for me was like a whole another level.
Yeah.
Uh, Also, it's an incredible song. So
Oh, it's yeah, exactly. That helps, right?
right, but yeah,
So I just refreshed my YouTube page to make sure I'm not missing any questions. But David's question is producing new audio elements every week, right? how do you keep things fresh for yourself in production, and overcoming potential creative block with that short of a turnaround time? Because I know some people sit down to write music or score music that, and they take weeks to write a song or months even, right? But you've
Right.
got to kind of turn around these elements and sort of keep this fresh on a week to week basis. And when tagging on to that, when now you're not just doing it for your location at Ballantyne, but you've got so many other campuses and so many people, and music is such an important part of that experience.
Mhm.
How do you keep that fresh? Like, what's your how do you avoid producer's block, writer's block?
Yeah. One thing that it's really simple, but I have a template, but it has no sounds in it. I never have anything ready to go because you'll tend to like just use those things every time. So my
Right.
template, I make myself start from scratch on every project.
Hmm.
And I'd never start, usually never start with like piano or anything that makes it feel full or makes it feel complete, because I found that when I do that for myself, the fuller and bigger and like, you know, once you have that, you're not going to chase anything intricate, at least for me,
Right.
as you won't chase as much because you already feel like it feels good. Like you're going to have piano on a song,
Hmm.
but if you start there, again, for me, to me, that the piano is like a finisher because you already know
Right.
that's the song. So
Right.
I'll chase um, a tiny. I'm just trying to think of like an example. A tiny little round synth that's just doing like a small hook
Right.
that just repeats itself. That kind of goes in the background of the verses. Like finding little things like that, I geek out on that, and I'll start with things like that. So like atmosphere sounds, anything that's tonally going to set the song. Like, Here's in Heaven, like I didn't start with the piano chords. I started with that airy thing that's happening.
Right. Right.
That set the tone. Um, and yeah, so that's like one of my tips and tricks,
Right.
like
Right. Right.
um, is really chasing fresh new characteristics and ideas on the front end, and not trying to like send a full song to a programmer and it's like, here, add some cool sparkly stuff on top. Like, no,
Right.
actually starting with this, with the hook, starting with the things that make it interesting,
Right.
um, for my mind, make it fresh every time.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think that that's, I mean, I'm not a keyboard player, but if I was, that would be some real good advice. Like I think, everybody starts from the foundation instead of beginning, I guess, with the end in mind, right?
Right.
Is kind of how I'd put it. But
Yeah.
let
And I
me
usually
mhm.
put bass last on the track too. Like
Okay.
basic keys, um, when I'm like demoing it out, for the band to learn it or whatever, that's also going to make it feel complete. So those last two, like those couple things, really are like, now I have the bass, and now it feels
Right.
complete.
Right.
It's a good feeling. Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's cool. Here's a I want to get into a bit more of the writing process slash
Yeah.
producing process of elevation worship,
Yep.
because I'm sure a lot of people who are watching are definitely interested in learning that, or at least getting a bit of insight into that. But before I get to that point, so I met you through LJ. LJ is my brother.
Yep.
Anybody who knows me for any length of time know how I feel about LJ Mitchell, right? Like if you've had a conversation with me about music or keyboards, you know exactly how I feel about LJ Mitchell. He's like
Right.
one of my favorite people in the entire world, and we've been good friends for a long time. He
Right.
was one of my guests on the program, and we met through LJ. I actually remember the night we met. I think we went to Chop Steakhouse and hung out for a
Yep.
bit. I remember that night clearly. And one of the things that struck me is like, if people see you so comfortable and calm on stage, I want people watching this to know that that is how Aaron Robertson is 100% of the time. I don't think you have a bone in your body that is flustered. Like you're just so chill, like 100% chill, 100% of the time. Like every time I've seen you, I've met you, you're just like, yeah, man,
Yeah, dude.
life is good. It's so cool, right? So I'm like, how does as a producer, because obviously there's different styles, and I've met producers that are their personality is imposing. They're very they command the room, right? Producers and artists alike. You are like the complete opposite of that. Just really cool, really mellow, really chill, but you somehow are able to command and sometimes you see these I watch these like background videos mainly to see you guys. I'm like, yo, I want to see I get so excited. I show my kids, I call my kids, I go, look, LJ's on TV. Like my kids are like, who's that? I'm like, don't worry, this is daddy's friend. So I watch these background videos, right? And I see you guys at work, and I'm like, you somehow, despite your personality, are able to command this respect. Talk to me a little bit about that. What is that like, and what's your producing style like for those who are like, well, I don't know if I could produce because I'm so shy, or I'm calm, or I'm laid back, or
Right. I will say, if you put a microphone in front of me in a crowd of people, it's a whole different person. Like I suck at that. It's just
yeah,
you tell me, hey, next Friday, we're gonna need you to just say a little something to the team. That's just anxiety
right,
for 9 days for me. But I'm very much like in the moment, and I love in the moment stuff. Um, yes, I am chill, but I'm also like during music, like a musical chase. I'm very detail oriented, and like um, whenever I like paint a wall, if there's a tiny little thing, I'll notice it, and I have to fix it right now.
hmm,
So there's that side of me too, and that comes out. I feel like balancing because our band guys are like my closest friends.
hmm,
So there's always that. I love making people feel comfortable. We're bros. It's not like they're gonna be uncomfortable with me, but
right,
the I just love everybody like really feeling like, all right, let's do this together. Let's have a good
right.
time.
Gotcha.
And once there's something that needs to happen, the chillness and all that stuff. I never get demanding or anything. I feel like, but when you're super chill and all that, and then you like, hey, I need to fix this. We gotta fix that. Like everybody will be like, oh, we have to fix this because it ain't chill right now. But it's never like like I'm saying, I'm not commanding
Right,
or demanding or anything like that. But definitely, like the attention to detail pops out, and when it does, like we
right.
find out what we do. But I really do love making people feel comfortable. Um, that's just one of my favorite things.
Right. So
Whatever,
so then
wherever it
so
is.
so then would you say that how you guys make music at Elevation, how you approach your records is more of a collaborative effort?
It depends on the song.
Right.
So um, the process, for the most part, over years, has been song will get written. Um, I'll get like a rough demo of
Hmm.
an acoustic guitar, maybe a piano, and a vocal, track to click, and I'll just create the vibe and the hooks and the drum beats and get the entire song mapped out. Pretty much to the point usually where we have all my loops are done, or we'll tweak them to make. Once we get up with the band, I can tweak my session to make it what we've figured out together. Um, and some songs are different. Like Rattle was a completely different scenario.
Right.
That was Pastor Stephen and Chris, like, and or Brandon Lake was part of it too. They were writing it, and we just stuck around after church and like, can we mess around with the song real quick? And I'm like, yeah. And we like, I had my mic going to the band guys. Chris and Pastor Stephen and Brandon are kind of talking about the direction of the song. We're all kind of figuring it out together. The guys were kind of still like I was communicating the same way I usually would, but it was a different scenario for something like that. And
Right.
I would just suggest like, hey, let's do two kicks on like every downbeat. Let's make that the chorus kick beat. But like had some bass ideas, um, some walk down chromatic idea, like different things here and there, but like it wasn't the same as all right, here's my demo. Let's all get together and learn it, and then we'll tweak it from there. It
Right.
was
Right.
more hands on for everybody. Um, but yeah, that's been the process for the most part. Um, for most songs I've been involved in, it's that initial. Here's the song in a rough format. You hash it out. Then we'll get the band together, get it ready for the weekend. Then we'll play it in church for a while. If there's anything that needs to happen, we'll fix it over time, or change it over time, or like, hey, I feel like that down chorus flopped. Let's figure that out. And like Chris and worship leaders can feel that stuff too. So if something needs to be changed, we can do it. We're literally like playing it with our church like over a long period of time.
Right.
So we have time to like perfect it. And then at the end of all that, we do like pre-production days for albums that sometimes we literally, the church has been great, or the song has been great in church, but let's try something. And then so like the song Authority that's on this latest album, we've been doing it, the church loved it, and a lot of people like, I love that song.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris was like, there's something about it that I don't know why I'm not loving it, but I know that it works at church. It's just something about it. I was like, I feel you. I don't know if the chorus progression is doing the right thing for us or what. And we just like, during pre-production, addressed that and pretty much I changed, so to let go of what we'd always done, the piano hook that's at the top, it's like kind of like a Sigur Rós type thing.
Mm-hmm.
That was just an idea I had while we were messing with it that kind of like took us this other direction and sparked a new chorus progression idea, sparked some other changes, some drum beat stuff that happened with the song. All of that changed during pre-production. So even though the song was working great in church and people loved it and it was like worshipful and everything it needed to be, we still wanted it to be better. And yeah, so there's that side too. But yeah, you say something. I'm trying to think of.
Do you guys, and maybe, and if I like, we, for those watching, we haven't had any conversation prior to this, so we're just kind of, this is organic, we're just having a chat, so I have nothing planned. So if I ask anything that's out of bounds, just like raise the flag and be like, that's out of bounds.
If you give me a list of what you're gonna ask me, I would have overthought it and I would be stressed.
Yeah, exactly. So I like, this is perfect. But give me a little bit of, do you guys ever, because what I find interesting, right, is that when you guys write music, it's always defining, and it's always current to an era, but those songs were never necessarily written for this time. You know what I'm saying? So you may write a song that's way before now, months ago, but when you sing it now, like a song like The Blessing or Testimony,
Mm-hmm.
which is like one of my favorite songs, right?
So,
It's like it's so perfect to what's happening now, but it wasn't necessarily written for now. Do you
right.
guys ever like listen to, like, do you guys ever, not compare is not the word I'm looking for, but do you ever listen to other stuff that's out there? Because it's got to be hard to be always defining a sound of a generation. It's got to become tiring at some. I think about, if I'm always the guy making sure this generation of worshipers sounds the way it's supposed to sound, like at some point, like, do you guys ever stop to or are you just so focused? What I find interesting is that you probably, I don't know. I think, me personally, I go, maybe they just make music for their church and we just all want to go to their church, so we all love it. But tell me a little bit about that. Like, what is that like? Like, what's that? Do you stop and pick up a CD from somebody else and say, "Man, this is a cool sound," or is it just like a laser focus on you and developing, beating you? In other words, competing with yourself and becoming a better elevation worship every time.
Gotcha. The songwriting. So I've been like somewhat involved in some songwriting, but I'm not like heavily involved by any means. This past year or two, we've been co-writing with more people outside.
Right.
Um, like the song "Authority" I mentioned, like Scott and Brooke Ligerwood were involved with that. Brandon Lake wrote on a few songs on this new album, and Carrie and Cody again made the blessing. So there's been a push, I think, to do more of that in these past or from like during the season, I guess. Um, which, yeah, I think the songwriting is there's always that challenge of, has this been said a million times? It's a fresh new way to do this. Um, Pastor Stephen's really good with coming up, like having very um, like my testimony or like statements that are really powerful.
Right.
I mean, he's preaching every week and saying amazing stuff. So like he's got this like vocabulary and this cool way to say things that translates well to like big picture ideas of a song. Um, which it's easy to sit down on the piano, play something slow, and immediately start talking about you make me feel safe, God, or something. Like
Yeah.
real that have been happen like done over and over and over and over. But yeah, there's always like this really cool spark from him that I think um, creates a very focused direction of where a song can go and what it can be. And as well as other songwriters too. Like I think it was testimony that Brandon Lake had ad-libbed at a conference that Chris was watching, or he was there, and Chris heard Brandon say an ad-lib is like "from death to life" or something, and like Chris was like, "What was that you were singing?" And Brandon's like, "I don't. It's just an ad-lib. I just." And they wrote the song. They started writing because
Wow.
of that moment. Um, for me, like, so yeah, I don't know, like, when it comes to like what's happening now, the blessing was just crazy how the timing was, but they didn't know that, like the shutdown was about to happen when they wrote it.
Right. Right.
Um, the what's the other one? Like Rattle and um, like that just came out of nowhere too. But I think like during the whole shutdown, um, leadership's been very forward moving and not trying to
Mm.
take a break. Literally,
Right.
like people do this right now. Let's freaking put it out. Let's do it. Let's make
Right.
the song, finish it. Let's do it. Put it out.
Right.
So yeah, and we had just Graves like didn't have the blessing, didn't have Rattle.
Yeah, I remember talking to LJ about this. I'm like, "When's
Yeah,
the record coming out, bro?" He's
yeah,
like, "Yeah,
yeah.
we just put it on
They
hold again."
printed CDs, realized the blessing was going to go on it, added the blessing, reprinted CDs, and then
Yeah.
we got Rattle reprint CDs with Rattle like crazy, but
Yeah.
super special timing for me production wise. Um, I had a. I was gonna tell me what your question for me was again with production.
So in
Oh,
terms of,
yeah,
yeah, like your sound,
I
yeah.
don't listen to worship music much ever. I don't listen to a lot of music, which is weird. Which is bad. But I love a lot of stuff, and I just don't like if something comes out that day or that week. I won't. I just don't listen to it for some reason. And I like a
Mm,
bunch of. I like pretty much every genre except for like screamo and
right.
metal. If people weren't screaming over it, I think I'd like the music
Uh-huh.
because it reminded me of like a chase scene or something. But I like a lot of different types of stuff. I'm bad about listening to music on the reg. By the time the day's over and I've worked on stuff all day, I usually just want to listen to a podcast or drive around in silence. Um, but we do reference things, but I don't think many times we've said, um, hey, I want this to be like this. I think we'll find elements sometimes to be like, this could be a cool syncopation that we
Right.
could try on this bridge.
Right.
But big picture, like this song should be like this song, or like every now and then you'll have that conversation, and sometimes it's, is this song sounding too much like this song?
Right.
Before you
Right.
realize, it's like, hey, I think this sounds like that. We didn't subconsciously, it just happened. That conversations happen sometimes, but yeah, I'm bad about finding references. Like
Yeah.
again, I know a lot of music and I listen to stuff, but I'm more of an adjective guy,
Right.
um, if that makes sense. But yeah, we do reference things. I I don't usually reference things from worship music. It,
Right.
like when I'm trying to figure out a vibe for a song, but
Yeah.
sometimes.
I think you know what I think it is for from an outsider standpoint anyway. Looking in, I think what it is that you guys your sound is authentic. It's authentically elevation, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's the danger. I do it too. When I a lot of times I'll get calls to come in and design a new system or a new lighting system for a church, lighting, video, and audio, and you get reference. Oh, I want my church to look like Elevation, or I want to have Elevation vibe. And my response is always, "But you're not Elevation." It's
Right.
okay to reference something, but who you're called to be authentically, yeah, you can take things on how, and obviously I watch a lot of what you guys do from a tech standpoint to learn how to do things like the living as one servers that you guys use. I learned from you, so you know what I mean. So there's things that you can point to, but I think because your sound as Elevation Worship is authentically you, it's not difficult to create that sound, and you don't necessarily need referencing. Wouldn't probably be of much help anyway, because nothing else out there is like you and like your sound. So I think for me, looking on anyway, that's I'll
True.
take a question from Ethan. He says, how do you manage the balance between writing and producing, to your personal preference on songs against producing a sound and arrangement that works in sort of a corporate worship set?
Can you repeat that one more time?
How do you balance, or how do you manage the balance between writing and producing? And you may have touched on this a little bit earlier, talking about the things that you like innately, but that balance between writing and producing towards sort of your preference of how you feel like something should go, versus if there is a difference, how it would work for worship.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's a good question. Just needed to hear it twice.
Yeah. Yeah, all good.
Yeah, so I don't think sometimes my instincts. Ooh, one good reference: resurrecting. Back in the day, we were working on that. I came up. Matt Brock and I were working on it, and the bridge progression was super like, to me. I was like, this is beautiful, and it felt a little cinematic, but it was just like the way it was a little moody though. But I was like, this is gonna like make people cry. But that song became 4-1-5 all the way through for the most part, and it was the right call. But those chords, I was like geeking. I was like, I love these chords, and I think it could have. And we sometimes actually the gospel version, I think, or something has it in the bridge, um, and it does work. But for the song, the other progression, and for the theme of what was being said, made way more sense to do the 4-1-5 progression instead of my moodier one.
Right.
And it's like one of the coolest songs to play for the church and for when we're out on the road. Like it's just super triumphant and is the right call. So things like that, yes, I have preference. Um, Sometimes I'll think a song like miscommunication, or not miscommunication, but like "Sea of Victory." I heard it as more of like a sped up vibe and more rock, almost like a little tougher. and Chris was hearing it as a slower mid-tempo worship vibe. But the cool thing is that the bridge hook, we were working on it as a band, and we were kind of stuck on the bridge, and came up with the bridge like hook line. But I wrote that because I thought we were in this like rockier, going for this rockier thing. So to me, it was like a tough line, and I was stoked on it. But then when we circled back, we realized that it needed to be more worshipful, big picture.
Mm-hmm.
But the line stayed, and I would have never come up with that line if Chris had initially told me this needs to be a slower, a little bit slower, more worshipful thing. So there's also that balance of like you're doing things you like and thinking something, but it's not the end goal for the church. But even going out and trying something, even if your mind isn't saying this song's going to be like this at the end, that got me to a cool place, you know. And sometimes like choosing or going for your preference first, or going for something even though it's not the end goal, you can find things and bring them back and then say, okay, well, this actually needs to be like this. But you still have all these other things that came from another place in your mind and heart. So it's a little bit of both. Like if you always say like this needs to be for the church and very this lane, sometimes you get kind of dull, like you're confined to a box immediately right off the bat. So yeah, I think like using preference and trying things that you think are just cool ideas, or and maybe outside of what the end goal is, can help you find things that can be applied to the actual box.
Makes sense.
That makes sense.
So here's another question. Curious about your move from Reason to Logic, since Reason
Yeah.
takes VSTs now. How do you
Yep.
approach using Reason live?
Yep. So 3 months after Reason, or after I quit using Reason for production, they came out with Reason 10 or 9.5, which had VST support.
Mm-hmm.
By that time, so I was like, it was the first album I'd ever produced by myself for the church. Because Mac Brock was there. Again, like he's the one that got me to come play at the church, and he was producing the album for years. I was like programming and playing keys on them, and then eventually was like producing them with him. Hallelujah Here Below was the first one that I did by myself, and also the first one I did strictly in Logic. There's only 2 songs that I kind of produced in Reason, that was Hallelujah Here Below and Worthy.
Mm-hmm.
But all the rest of the album from here on out has been in Logic. One thing is like, it's easy to just send Logic sessions. Nobody I know uses Reason.
Right.
In Elevation for production. So like Ian McIntosh is a bud of mine. He's a huge Reason guy out in California. There's other dudes that use it, but part of it for me was just accessibility, being able to send sessions to friend or to anybody that's in the circle. You know, everybody I know uses it, and also how easy it is to use with video was a big thing for me. So that's why I kind of switched over and before, the VST thing, I had completely overhauled everything to make Logic be my thing. And you don't want to do all that and then realize you could go back to Reason.
Right.
And then like I was like, man, shoot, I'm already in it. I'm just gonna stay in it. So been doing Logic for production, and then live I'm in Reason because it's super stable. I've got 2 sessions. So right now live, when I'm there on the weekend or on the road, I've got a really old MacBook that I got when I was 20. It's
Nice.
2006.
Uh-huh.
And it still runs, and I only use it because it still works, and I think it's amazing. And that's Reason 5, and it's like, I like that it's kind of a little thing. Like there's a lot of keyboard players that like know about that laptop, which I think is really cool. And I have a backup in case it crashes, because it's one day will. And then the other laptop is MacBook Pro running Reason 11. So
Mm-hmm.
I've got 2 computers, both running Reason, 2 sessions open, I think on each one. Yeah. Um, 2 MIDI controllers. It's just super stable. It's really easy to automate, and I've never used MainStage or anything. I've just heard so many people talk about how much it crashes,
Yep.
and Reason literally never crashes. Back in 2009, I used to like do countdowns, and I would play tracks that I'd made. Like literally, it's reading my entire session, and I'm like soloing over it and stuff. This is way
Yeah.
back, and it would just like read my entire session live, take me playing throughout the entire thing, and like it just did great. Sometimes it would
Yeah.
crash because again that was that old MacBook that I stuff. But
Right.
um, like in Logic or even Mates, like reading 20 tracks of MIDI and playing and doing it live um, isn't always like the safest.
Right. 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 For sure.
So yeah, I just love how stable it is.
Makes
And
sense.
yeah, dude.
I always tell people like when we have arguments about consoles, right? I say it doesn't matter how good your console sounds if it doesn't work. So yeah, that's first and foremost. It's got to work. So
For
that's a
sure.
very good reason for using something is the fact that it has always worked. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, so typically with songwriting, it tends to start with I guess for the ones that you've been in because you said that you weren't you're not necessarily always in these songwriting sessions, but
Uh,
Matthew's question is, um, what's typically the starting point? Is it typically lyrics, or is it music or riff or something like that, or is it kind of lyrics first? I guess it
yeah,
varies, right?
it's so most of the sessions where it's like Chris Brown, Pastor Steven, whoever else, a lot of the time it's literally acoustic and piano. Almost, I feel like almost always. Um, for me, when I write, I'm usually like making a track and coming up with ideas as I go. But a lot of those sessions start with like a voice memo, a line, or like a verse idea or a chorus. Like I have this idea, like "Here Comes Heaven." I was actually part of that, right? But it's a Christmas song, but it was like
Uh-huh.
"Here Comes Heaven" was like the line that Pastor Stephen had. He was like, I wanted to say like "Here comes heaven" or something, and we had that. Chris pulled up an acoustic. I brought out a laptop, and I was like working on a track the whole time. And I was using a felt piano, um, and that like verse melody came from like me jamming on that dun dun dun. And I feel like when it's like it depends who's in the room, you know.
Right.
Uh, but for the most part, I feel like there's some sort of start or some sort of idea to go off of, and it's usually based around chords
Right.
and a melody and lyric. And there's not a lot of like track stuff happening. On the
Right.
opposite side of that, um, songs like this is older, but like "Grace Like a Wave"
Mm-hmm.
was written just like straight up making a track and figuring out what to do to the track.
Right.
Um, with some of the elevation rhythm stuff, that's definitely the case. Like
Right.
making the track while the song's been written. And for poppier stuff like that, that's I feel like the best way to do it. It's hard to get
Right.
a super fresh, not for everybody, but for me, it's hard to get like a super fresh, cool, really fun, different idea with an acoustic guitar when you're making like pop music.
Right.
Um, for me, it takes like having the direction of a track to really like lock in. There's just a
Right.
lot of syncopation too, like pop lyrics and like how will this move and how will this push and how will this affect? Where can we put a hook here? What if we put a hook in this gap after you say that line? Like there's a lot of that stuff um, that just happens like cohesively
Right.
with a track. So
That's
put that up.
amazing, man. Listen, I could sit here and talk to you forever, but forever won't allow us to do that. So we have run out of time. But listen, I want to thank everybody who's been watching. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I we've had many conversations since we met, and I always enjoy talking to you. I always, it's like a breath of fresh air talking to you because you're so chill. Like, and there's a lot of the world is so high strung right now, and everything. A lot of stuff's happening in our world that's very tiring. I made the comment to my friend this morning that I'm just tired. I'm just
Yeah,
tired. I'm my heart's tired. My soul's tired.
yeah.
But every time I talk to you, it's like, man, I feel rejuvenated. I feel good about life. It's that vibe. Is like you're. Yeah, I know you're from South Carolina. I don't know if everybody from South Carolina is that way, but I feel like you should be from like California or something because you
I'll
just
take
have
it.
this like,
I'll
yeah,
take it.
yeah, you got this like California vibe or Jamaica. Yeah, I mean you got this laid back like,
Right.
island. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, man, everything's just cool. It's so zen.
You
Um,
you got laid back roots. Are you hustling? I
yeah,
got like country boy roots, and I'm
yeah,
hell, dude. Thank you. That means a lot. I
yeah,
definitely
man.
enjoy this. I would do it again. Shoot.
Yeah, man, and I'm excited about when we get back to normal, whatever normal is. I'll be back in Charlotte probably before you get a chance to come back to Toronto, but I'm definitely looking forward to coming and hanging with you guys again. I always tell the story of my first time at Ballantyne because like I grew up in church, right? Like, and I mix in church and stuff, but as a touring guy, I love big PA and just like big sound, and I to me a concert or a church service, nothing. If I'm standing in front of a PA system and the drums and bass don't sound good, I am not having a good time. And man, I remember sitting in that seat, and they had a seat with my name on it. LJ hooked me up. I walked in and my
I remember,
name's on the seat.
I
I was like,
remember
man, this is dope. You guys, that 2 minute countdown happened, and that drum roll and count roll off and downbeat, and I leaned back in my seat and I love it. It was
that's
great.
all
So
right.
yeah, I'll definitely be back to visit. You don't have to convince me, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
thanks for taking the time, man, and I always appreciate it. I don't take it for granted. Thank you for hanging with me for an hour, and thanks to everybody who's been watching.
Yes.
Join us tomorrow. We're talking to Stephen Vian, the owner at Production Service Industries, and Steve has built many successful production companies. So definitely somebody you want to hear from. But yeah, again, if you haven't done so, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Jason Reynolds Pro Audio. We're doing high level teaching. I'm teaching you everything I know. I'm taking everything that's in here and teaching it to folks. I'm not keeping any secrets, not hiding anything. So that's important. And also subscribe and share the channel. I might go down to once a week in June because we're running out of people to talk to. I don't have that many friends, contrary to what some of my friends believe, that I'm this real popular guy, but we're starting to run out of people. But we might do some part twos, who knows. So subscribe to the channel so you can keep in touch and know what's happening, and join us tomorrow if you got some time. Aaron, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
All right.
Fun, dude.
And we're no longer